My neighbor expected me to pay for half of his fence upgrade, arguing, "It'll make both our yards look better." When I declined, he built it partially on my property and said, "I did you a favor." I presented him with a property line dispute and quietly said, "You have two choices, move it back or pay me rent for using my land." I've lived in Greeley, Colorado, for 14 years. Bought my home after my divorce. It's a quiet street, nothing fancy, but it's clean, and the folks here mostly mind their business. I keep my yard tidy. I don't throw parties, don't cause noise. I just want peace and privacy. Last year, the house next to mine sold. That's when Greg moved in. Mid-50s, ex-military, always in a sleeveless shirt, always in the garage. We didn't talk much, which was fine by me. About a month after he moved in, Greg rang my doorbell holding a beer. Said he wanted to talk about our fence, so I followed him to the backyard. We stood there looking at the old wooden fence between our properties. It was leaning in spots, yeah. A few boards had warped over time, but it was still standing. I figured I'd patch it up when I had time. Greg didn't see it that way. "I'm thinking about tearing this down and putting in a new one," he said. "Taller, stronger, looks way better. Already got a guy who can do it next week." I nodded slowly. "All right, if that's what you want to do on your side." He cut me off. "Well, I figured we'd split it. 50-50. I frowned. I didn't ask for a new fence. No offense, but that thing's an eyesore. Upgrading it helps your yard too. Adds value, curb appeal. Maybe, but I didn't plan for this. And I didn't agree to anything." He gave a fake laugh. "Come on. It's a few $1,000. I'm already doing the work." "I'm not paying for a project I didn't ask for," I said. "If you want a new fence, that's up to you. But I'm not on the hook for it." His tone changed. "It separates both our properties. It's common courtesy to split it. Not when I didn't ask for it." He didn't like that. His jaw tightened. He muttered, "Fine," and walked off. Didn't talk to me for the next 2 weeks. Then one Friday, I come home from work, and guess what? Greg's out back with the crew tearing down the old fence. Piles of lumber already stacked up. New posts being drilled into the ground. I figured, whatever. He wants to pay for it, let him. But as I stood there, something didn't sit right. The posts weren't in the same place as the old ones. I grabbed the original property survey from my house, something I kept in a drawer with the closing documents. Walked the line, measured every spot, took pictures. Greg's new fence wasn't on the old line. It was about 18 inches into my property. Not just a little corner, every post. The whole run of it, clean across the backyard. A whole strip of my land now claimed by Greg's upgrade. I talked to the contractor, asked him who marked the property line. He said Greg had. No survey, no markers. Just eyeballed it, apparently. The next day, I waited until Greg was out front cleaning his driveway like he always does. I walked over. "Hey, Greg. We need to talk about that fence." He looked up, already smug. "Looks great, huh? You built it on my property." He chuckled. "You're kidding." I measured. "You're 18 inches over." He shrugged. "I did you a favor. It looks better. Cleaner this way." "No, you took my land." He looked annoyed. "You're being ridiculous. It's 1.5 feet. I already paid for everything. Let it go." "You have two choices," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Move it back to the correct line. Or pay me rent for the land you're using." He laughed in my face. "Rent? What are you talking about? You're using my property. If you're going to leave that fence there, you're going to pay to use that space." "You're seriously threatening me over this?" "No. I'm giving you a legal option." He shook his head and walked away. I didn't argue. I just got to work. I pulled the survey again. Took fresh photos. Wrote down all the measurements. Took a day off work and went down to the Weld County Assessor's office. They pointed me to the right paperwork. I filed a property line dispute and served him with a notice. The best part? Greg signed for it himself. I watched from my kitchen window as he opened the envelope. He looked like someone just kicked his dog. Still, he didn't move the fence. So I took the next step. I hired a lawyer. Cost me a bit, but she was sharp. Said I had a strong case. We sent Greg a formal letter, either remove the fence or negotiate a lease for the encroached land. If not, we'd file suit and seek back rent, legal fees, and a court-ordered removal. Greg responded by getting loud. He marched over to my front door, pounded on it like a cop, and yelled, "You really want to go down this road?" I didn't answer the door. I just called the police and reported a disturbance. They came out, told him to leave. That shut him up for a while. A week later, I got a letter from his lawyer. Total nonsense. Claimed it was an honest mistake and asked for mediation. But he still didn't move the fence. That's when I decided I wasn't letting this go. So mediation was set. Greg didn't want to back down, and I wasn't about to let someone steal part of my yard and call it a favor. We met at a small law office downtown. Just me, my lawyer Marcy, Greg, and his lawyer, a guy who looked like he hadn't slept in days. The mediator was some retired judge who didn't seem thrilled to be there. Right off the bat, Greg acted like I was the one causing problems. "This is a waste of time," he said. "It's 18 inches. My client is being generous even showing up here." I kept my mouth shut. Marcy handled it. She laid out the survey, the photos, the legal codes. She didn't yell or talk big. She just pointed at the facts. Quiet. Cold. Sharp. The judge nodded along, then looked at Greg's lawyer. "Your client knowingly built a fence on land that isn't his. You're not going to win this." Greg leaned forward and said, "You're siding with him?" "I improved the property. I increased the value." "Whose property?" the judge asked. Greg sat back. He didn't have an answer. The judge gave him 1 week. "You can remove the fence or negotiate a lease at a fair market value. If you don't respond in writing by next Friday, I'll recommend litigation." Greg didn't respond. So we sued him. Once the lawsuit hit, everything changed. Greg stopped speaking to anyone on the street. He stopped hosing his driveway. His face got redder every time he saw me outside. But then he made it worse for himself. A month into the case, I came home to find 2 big wooden planter boxes right up against the fence on my side. Freshly painted, filled with rocks. Not dirt, just heavy rocks. And a note. "You said I'm on your land. So enjoy these." My gift. That was the last straw. I called the lawyer, showed her the pictures. We added harassment and property damage to the suit. We asked for triple rent plus damages. That got his lawyer's attention. A few days later, I got an offer. Greg wanted to settle quietly. He'd pay a small monthly rent, less than market rate, and sign a use agreement. No apology, no removal, nothing. Just a deal to make it all go away. I rejected it. Then came the twist I didn't expect. A neighbor from 2 houses down knocked on my door. Said she heard about my fence issue. Said she had a problem too. Greg had extended his fence in the back corner of her yard too. Not by much, but enough that her dog couldn't run like he used to. She thought it was an honest mistake. Until she saw what he did to me. Another guy on the block, retired and sharp as a tack, came over a few days later. Said he was planning to sell soon, but Greg's fence now blocked his utility access. He was going to file a complaint. 3 of us. That's when I realized Greg wasn't just careless. He was trying to grab land all over the block. The moment I found out Greg had messed with 2 other properties, something clicked. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a pattern. He was pushing boundaries, literally, to squeeze more space out of his lot, and he figured nobody would care enough to fight back. Most folks would let a few inches slide. But Greg didn't just take inches. He took feet. And he was arrogant enough to act like he was doing us a favor. So we met, me, Carla, the woman with the dog, and Roy, the retired guy with the blocked utilities. We compared our property lines, surveys, and fence measurements. It was all right there in black and white. Greg had stolen land from all three of us. We decided to file a joint complaint. Carla called her cousin who worked in local real estate law. He reviewed everything and said we had grounds for a formal injunction. Roy's nephew was a city inspector. Within a week, we had 2 official complaints filed with the county and a new lawyer who agreed to take our combined case. Word got out fast. A few more neighbors started checking their own lines. One couple, early 30s, just had a baby, found out that Greg had extended his backyard fence behind their shed by nearly 2 feet when they weren't looking. Another man, Brian, said Greg had tried to convince him to split the cost of a shared fence last year, but ended up doing the whole job himself after Brian said no. Same story. Every time. Greg wasn't a careless neighbor, he was a strategic jerk who knew most people wouldn't push back. He didn't know we were different. The day the city came out to do a full inspection, Greg flipped. He was out in the yard pacing, red in the face, yelling into his phone. The inspector didn't even blink. Just took photos, made notes, and left. A week later, Greg received multiple notices, one from the city, one from our lawyer, and another from the HOA, who now had enough reason to fine him for non-compliant fencing and unauthorized construction. And then came the best twist yet. Marcy, my lawyer, dug into his property records while preparing for trial. And she found something. Greg had applied for a VA-backed refinance on his home 3 months earlier. The loan approval was based on square footage and usable yard space. The yard space that wasn't his. If we won in court, and at this point, it looked good, he could be accused of submitting false information on a federal loan. Not just a civil issue now. A potential federal one. We handed that to the VA fraud hotline. The man who thought he was too smart to get caught was now staring down. A civil suit from 3 neighbors, a formal complaint from the HOA city, fines for code violations, a possible federal investigation. Greg tried to retaliate one last time. One morning I woke up to find a dead squirrel stuffed into my mailbox. At first, I thought it was just some random animal until I saw the note. Drop the suit or this gets ugly. I handed it straight to the police. They took fingerprints. They didn't find a match right away, but now Greg was under investigation for harassment and animal cruelty. Things were officially spiraling for him. But I wasn't done. After the squirrel incident, things got tense on the street. People were locking their mailboxes, installing cameras, keeping their kids inside when Greg was out. He stopped pretending to be the friendly neighbor. He stopped speaking altogether. He'd just glare from his porch, beer in hand, like he was guarding a prison yard. Then came the court date. Greg tried to delay it twice. But the judge wasn't having it. We all showed up with our documents, our surveys, our photos, and our anger. He showed up with a different lawyer. Third one since this all started. When the judge asked if we wanted to speak, I did. I told the whole story. From the beer in his hand to the fake favor to the mailbox squirrel. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't shout. I just laid it out, step by step. Carla went after me, then Roy, then Brian. Each one told a different part of the same story. Greg's lawyer tried to say it was all misunderstandings, that Greg was just trying to improve the neighborhood, that this was a witch hunt. But the judge wasn't buying it. The court ruled in our favor. All 4 of us. Greg was ordered to tear down every piece of fencing that crossed property lines, pay rent for the time he had used our land, at market value, plus a penalty, cover legal fees and damages, and he had 30 days to do it, but here's the kicker. The judge also referred the case to the county prosecutor because of the forged property measurements on Greg's VA loan paperwork. That opened a whole other door. 2 weeks later, Greg's house had a notice taped to the door. Something from the federal loan department. I don't know what was in it, but I can guess. Greg tried one more stunt before the 30 days were up. Late one night, I woke up to popping sounds outside. I thought it was fireworks. But when I looked out the window, I saw smoke. Greg was trying to burn the fence down instead of taking it apart like the court ordered. I called 911. He got arrested that night. Arson, property damage, violation of court order. It was the end of the road for him. The HOA fined him thousands. The city condemned part of his backyard for illegal construction. The VA froze his loan. And the neighbors? They all turned their backs. Even the quiet ones. 3 months later, a for sale sign went up. He sold the house at a loss and moved out in silence. I watched the moving truck from my front porch. He wouldn't look at me. And here's the part that made it all worth it. After he left, I had the land surveyed again. I didn't just get my 18 inches back. I reclaimed almost 2 feet. I built a new garden bed right along that edge. Raised. Clean. Mine. And I installed a sign. Private property. No favors needed. I got my land back. I got justice. But I also learned something. Always stand your ground, even when someone tries to laugh in your face. Especially then. Because a man who takes an inch might be planning to take a mile. And sometimes, the best revenge is making sure he never takes again.